This is Malin Trout. Long time no see. I haven't done one of these Plain Explains for a while. Last time I did this was 7 years ago, and I was playing 2NL. I've made some progress. Now we're at 10. I can comfortably say that uh, I can beat anywhere from 2 to 10 NL, which is not something I would have been able to say 7 years ago. I definitely don't play as much as I used to play yet for some reason. I've continued to learn over time and pick up some tricks of the trade, if you will. I'm recognizing that a lot of this comes down to mindset and just the way you process the swings and think about the game holistically has a big impact on your win rate. So I thought I would take this time to basically record another 15-minute session. If you get anything out of this, you get something out of it. If you don't, you don't. Um, if you are someone who plays at 100 NL on Stars or I guess GG Poker or anything like that, and you have any suggestions for my play, by all means, please let me know what I could be doing better because I know I have leaks. Generally speaking, what I've learned from in these lower stakes is that you don't have to battle it out with guys who may be more regular. There's so many recreational players in these pools that your best bet is to get in pots with them and exploit their weaknesses. I think if you can do that and adjust your strategy accordingly, you can consistently win at these stakes. Another thing to remember is that the rake is quite high at the micro stakes, so not defending the big blind as much. I refrain from three betting out of position as much. I'm basically more reserved when it comes to seeing any flops. My opening ranges are not super tight, but definitely when I'm out of position, I sort of shy away from battling it out in those arenas, I guess, unless I'm given proper reason to enter into those positions. A big part of getting better at poker as well is, so I'm opening ace four off here because there are three recreationals leading, and with the recreational and the big blind and button, I'm more inclined to open with a wider range because I believe I have a post flop edge. So we're gonna continuation bet here with a gut shot and a heart. We have backdoor flush equity, and we'll see what happens. When he calls, I have to think what he's calling with. I mean, he could have ace two, ace five, five, six, which may give up here. And then he has a lot of 10x, which we're just not doing so well against. Generally, I stab at those. I mean, like, if he's tanking here, it's kind of interesting, right? He defends him. Maybe we check back, make decisions on rivers. Yeah. I don't know what this means. I'm just going to give it up. I know I definitely have weaknesses in my play, but when you play at these stakes, you can kind of afford not to win every position. Obviously, you want to get better at the game, so you think critically about it. But if you're not sure between, is a spot a good raise? Is it not? I err, at least I err on the more passive side. Unless I'm given a big reason to take a more aggressive approach, I'm basically more laid back in how I play. There are moments where I will fight back pretty heavily against clear errors or weaknesses that my opponents exhibit. Always good to see aces. Never fun when it gets folded around to, or folded out. Here we have Mr. Undenfined on the button. So standard 3-bet, ace king suited. See how he plays back. If he 4-bets, we're gonna just jam. I don't see any reason why not to. Against this texture, I guess you could c-bet a bunch. I don't have much equity, so I'm going to check. Again, my thought process is pretty straightforward. Against these with these textures, I don't think I should be continuation betting as much. When he checks back, that's kind of interesting. I guess I could justify a check call. I could have the best hand here if he has something like ace 5 and maybe just block bet. Yeah. The reasoning behind the block bet is maybe he wants to value bet 7x in that spot and he picks a bigger sizing. So, but I don't think he's going to raise over a block if he does have 7x. So I save myself some money and potentially get to see his hand either way. I think that's not something a lot of people at the lower stakes consider, is that there's value in, I don't want to say paying people off, but if you're given a good price, you might be paying them off, but why? To get information on that player. You can pay a player off just to see what they did, and you could use that information to your advantage in the future. I don't think enough people really consider that. I'm going to be c-betting on this texture a little bit wider, 9-10 jack, right? A lot of people may not consider that. They think, oh, I don't want to pay him off, but if you get information on your opponent, it's kind of an investment in your future strategy against that opponent, especially if you take a lot of notes, which if you want to be a winning player, you definitely must be taking notes. You have to, taking notes on players and their tendencies or what they've done is a demonstration of how critically you want to think about the game. Players at the highest level think very deeply about the game. Their reasoning processes are quite refined. I've watched my fair share of 500 Zoom play and explain, and 100 Zoom, and 100 NL, 1000 NL. And the guys who crush at the highest levels are just very reasoned in their approach and their strategy, level-headed, and that comes with taking notes. It comes with taking it seriously and thinking through and taking the time to think a little bit deeper than what your opponents may be. And so, and more than that, you exercise your brain. People might not give that enough credit, that taking notes, writing out what the opponent did, why it's relevant. When you take that extra step in deepening your thinking, you're also exercising your brain. And that not only applies to how much better you'll get at poker, but other areas of your life as well, right? So it's always good to give it your all, no matter what you're doing. This is kind of a lesson about life. No matter what you're doing, apply yourself wholeheartedly to it and take it seriously. Don't be lazy in your thinking, in your application, in your work, because when you exert that effort, it can bleed over into other areas of your life. So you may not only be getting better at poker, but your reasoning may be improving, which helps in other areas of your life. And then you not only grow as a poker player, but you may grow as a teacher, you may grow as a parent, XYZ. So I'm opening Jack 10 off here. I think it's a standard open to be fair. Obviously, it's much better when there's a recreational player in the big blind. Here, I think I'm really only targeting ace-x, so it would make more sense to check to him and check raise the flop to build a bigger pot. And when he does something like this, it's kind of interesting. I guess what I'm planning on doing here is I'm gonna call, and then I'm gonna bet one on all rivers and see what he does. Wow, okay, so he folds. I think I'm getting a ton of value if I play it that way as opposed to re-raising on the turn. Because if he is bluffing, then he's not going to call my re-raise anyway. He might with, I guess, a flush draw. But I don't even think he had a flush draw when he raises to that size. And when he checks back the flop. So I think he has complete air in that spot. So simply calling and then betting one and hopefully inducing him to bluff river stabs or river leads would get more money in the pot. That's how I thought about that. Again, label all of your opponents. I could arguably open this, right? Weaker opponents in the small and big blind, you could probably loosen up your range and be a little bit more aggressive. You tend to play a little bit more straightforwardly. I also have a note on myself. I think as important as it is to think about the tendencies of your opponents in the player pool and have notes on other players, it's equally important to have notes on yourself. The notes I have on myself are my tendencies and things that I think I don't do well, and really serve as a reminder of spots to be careful in, strategies to employ at this stake, and some more mindset related things as well. I have tendencies that I know have really have me bleeding money. So I have notes on myself really to serve as reminders of spots to be careful in and things to consider. Obviously, if you're playing on one table Zoom, it's a little bit slow. I would say, however, if you're playing 5NL, 2NL, 10NL, and you're not sure if you have an advantage in the games, if you're beating the games, and you're kind of static on your growth, that you should, if you're playing 3 tables Zoom, you should go down to 2. If at 2 you still feel like you don't know what you're doing, or you're basically not making any money after a large enough sample size, I'd recommend going down to 1. Typically speaking, to get better at the game, you need to be more focused. When you have the fundamentals down, then you can play more tables because you'll understand the spots a little bit better. Obviously, this is an amazing spot to be in. Aces, we got an open under the gun. When middle position 3 bets, much stronger ranges. And with aces, I'm loving this situation. Let's see what happens here. I mean, Alex's sizing on the 3-bet is a little weak. Does call. I think this is just a standard bet jam. Could arguably go like 13 to make it seem weaker and hopefully jams over me. He snap calls and we're just getting this in on turns. I'm sorry, I'm like whispering now. getting this in on turns. Okay. And then he folds. Maybe he has like, so we have to think, what does he have? Maybe King Jack floats. Maybe I could have check raised actually. It's actually, sometimes you'd make a decision and in the moment you're like, oh yeah, this is totally the right play. But then in retrospect, you consider other options and you're like, maybe it wasn't the right play. And that's really what it's all about. That's what differentiates people who get better at the game and those who stagnate or never improve is they never consider alternatives to position. So in retrospect, with the ace of clubs here, it very well could make more sense to check jam, right? Because if he checks back turn, what is he saying he has? If he checks back turn, he's saying he has air. He really has nothing. And then I could play rivers pretty uniquely if I know he checks back turn with the complete air. Any jack, queen, king comes, and I just jam rivers and put him in really tough spots, or bet tiny and do bluff raises. Obviously, with ace of clubs, I don't need as much protection, so I could consider checking. Now, if I had ace hearts, ace diamonds, ace spades, I would be jamming like 100% of the time on this turn. But with the ace of clubs, I could have at least considered checking back turn, or checking turn, not checking back, but checking turn. So yeah, I could learn something from this spot, and I hope you can too. This is interesting. We get 3-bet. We get 2 calls. This is unique. I'm going to sit out after this, and I mean, this is fascinating. I believe this is a fold. We'll see what happens here, and then we'll call it after. Yeah, and that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you learned something from it. God bless you all. I hope you have an amazing life. And may God continue to protect you and your families every day of your life. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.